Atlanta, summer of 2019. The kind of heat that makes the air shimmer above the asphalt and the magnolia trees smell too sweet to be real. I was sitting on my porch that morning, polishing the hood of my old teal 2003 Buick like it was a piece of family history. In a way it was. That car had carried me through 35 years of teaching, 2 graduations, my husband's funeral, and more Sunday church services than I could count. The chrome had dulled some, the seats had seen better days, but that car was mine, paid off, maintained, and faithful. When you've worked your whole life, when every mile has meant something, you hold on to what's yours. I remember humming softly to the radio Mahalia Jackson's His Eye is on the Sparrow, and wiping the last bit of dust off the hood when I saw her coming up the driveway. My daughter-in-law, Tasha. White linen dress, gold sandals, big sunglasses, and a purse that probably cost more than the Buick itself. Her walk had that click-click rhythm of someone who didn't come to visit, but to declare. "Mama E," she said, smiling the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "We need to talk about this car." I didn't look up right away. I took my time folding the rag, the sun glinting on the hood like a mirror. "What about it?" I asked. She sighed, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "You don't need it anymore. You're retired. Marcus and I talked about it and we think it's time to sell it. The money could go towards something useful. Maybe a down payment on the kids' college fund." Now she said that like she was reading off a shopping list. "No please, no, what do you think?" Just a decision dropped on my doorstep like unwanted mail. My chest tightened but I kept my face still. Across the street, old Mr. Jenkins was cutting his grass, pretending not to notice, but I could see him glancing over. Everyone in this neighborhood knew Tasha's tone. "I see," I said, still calm. "And who decided I don't need it?" "Well, Mama E, you don't go many places anymore, do you? You've got your groceries delivered, the church van picks you up on Sundays, and when you visit us, Marcus drives you. It's just sitting here wasting away. You should be thankful someone's thinking about putting it to better use." Thankful. That word hit harder than she realized. I was supposed to be thankful that she, a woman I'd watched marry my son 10 years ago in a $20,000 gown, was now deciding how I should live the rest of my life. I smiled. That's what I do when the words I want to say are too sharp to release. I smiled, stood up slow, and looked her straight in the face. "That car's been useful to me longer than you've been part of this family," I said quietly. Her smile faltered but she kept going. "Mama E, don't be difficult. Marcus already found a buyer who's interested. You'll get a fair price, and we can handle the paperwork for you. You don't have to worry about a thing." I wanted to laugh but my throat wouldn't let me. Instead, I thought of the first time I'd bought that car. My husband, Robert, was still alive then. He'd taken me to the dealership on my 50th birthday, said, "Baby, you've been riding the bus for 30 years. Time for your own wheels." We'd signed the papers together, both our names, and he'd said, "No matter what happens, make sure you keep this title in your name." I hadn't understood the weight of that advice until that moment on the porch. The sound of a lawn mower hummed in the distance. Tasha stood with one hand on her hip, the other scrolling through her phone. "We're coming Saturday to pick it up. I'll have Marcus handle it. You can give him the keys." I leaned against the porch rail, feeling the wood creak under me. "You're mighty sure of yourself, huh?" "I'm just trying to help," she said with a tight laugh. "We don't want you overexerting yourself or worrying about bills and maintenance. It's time to simplify." Simplify. Another word people like her use when they mean control. She was simplifying me, cutting down my independence like pruning a rose bush that still blooms. I took a deep breath, tasting the heat and the faint tang of oil and metal from the driveway. "Well," I said finally, "if that's what you and Marcus decided, then I guess we'll see." She smiled again, relieved, maybe thinking I'd agreed. "Good. I knew you'd understand. You always do." When she turned and walked back to her car, the smell of her perfume lingered in the air, sharp, expensive, and suffocating. She waved half-heartedly before driving off, tires crunching on the gravel. I watched her go until her shiny Lexus disappeared down the street. I sat back down and stared at my Buick. The sun was sliding lower now, bouncing gold off the windshield. My reflection looked tired but calm. That calm wasn't surrender. It was something else. A stillness that comes before a storm. Inside, the house was quiet. I fixed myself a glass of sweet tea, the ice clinking like a ticking clock. Every corner of that house held memories. Robert's old armchair, my collection of Sunday hats, the smell of lavender polish on the floors. This was my world. And yet, I could feel it shrinking each time someone like Tasha tried to make a decision for me. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing her voice. "You don't need it anymore." I thought about how she said it in front of neighbors like I was some old woman who'd lost her way. I thought about my students, how I used to teach them that ownership meant pride, that no one could take away what you earned with your own sweat. And here I was, being told otherwise by someone who didn't even know what hard work felt like. I got up, walked to the window and looked out at the driveway. The Buick sat there under the streetlight, its paint catching faint silver glints. It wasn't just a car. It was the last thing with my husband's fingerprints on it, the last thing that was entirely mine. The air outside was heavy, but I opened the window anyway, letting the cicadas buzz fill the room. In the dark, I whispered to myself, "We'll see about that, Tasha." The next morning I woke up early before sunrise. The sky was pink, soft, forgiving. I brewed coffee, buttered some toast, and sat with my old photo album open on the kitchen table. Pictures of me and Robert, young and grinning, standing by that very car. He'd written on the back of one photo, "For every road ahead, drive proud, baby." By the time the sun broke through the trees, I knew what I was going to do. I wasn't going to fight her. I wasn't going to argue or beg. People like Tasha feed off drama. They need to win arguments. But they never see the quiet kind of rebellion coming, the kind wrapped in grace. Later that day, I called my friend Renee from church. She worked in the clerk's office downtown and knew a thing or two about car titles. We talked for an hour, mostly about the weather, the choir, and then I casually asked what it took to transfer ownership of a vehicle. She explained, simple as pie. When I hung up, I looked at that Buick again through the blinds and smiled to myself. If Tasha thought I was done driving, she was about to learn I still knew every road out of town. The sun was setting again, the sky the color of peach cobbler, when I grabbed my keys and sat behind that familiar wheel. I didn't even start the engine. I just rested my hands there, feeling the warmth of the leather, the hum of all those years beneath my fingers. Freedom doesn't always roar. Sometimes it hums quietly in your own driveway, waiting for you to take the wheel one last time. And as I sat there, gospel music still low on the radio, I laughed softly. Not out of bitterness, but out of knowing. She had no idea what was coming next. That night after Tasha left, I sat by the window long after the streetlights came on, the Buick glinting faintly in the dark like it was waiting for me to make up my mind. I could almost hear Robert's voice again, that steady baritone that always carried a smile underneath it. "Baby," he used to say, "you can't stop folks from underestimating you, but you can surely stop them from being right." That was the line that settled my nerves. By sunrise, my plan was forming. Not revenge exactly, just restoration. A way to remind her and maybe even myself that my life didn't end the day I retired. I pulled out a yellowed envelope from my kitchen drawer, the one marked car title in my husband's handwriting. My name was right there, printed clear as day, Evelyn Carter. The Buick wasn't just registered to me, it was mine. Every cent, every oil change, every mile. I set the title on the table beside my morning coffee. The paper smelled faintly of the cedar box I kept it in. I thought about what Tasha had said, how she'd handle the paperwork. The nerve of it made me chuckle into my cup. I may be 67, but I still know how to handle my own affairs. Around 9 a.m., I called Mr. Freddie from next door. He's been a mechanic longer than most people in this neighborhood been alive. The kind of man who wears the same blue overalls every day, and still calls me Miss Evelyn like we're back in 1972. He came over with his little toolkit, wiping his hands on a rag. "Morning, Miss Evelyn. You called about the Buick." "I sure did, Freddie. I need to know how she's running, inside and out." He gave me a knowing look, the kind that said he'd already heard things. "This street has more gossip than a beauty salon. You planning on selling?" I smiled faintly. "Something like that." He popped the hood, the hinges squeaking like old knees, and peered in with his flashlight. "Battery's strong. Tires good. Little rust on the frame, but she's still got some life in her." I leaned on the fender, watching his hands move like a surgeon's. "Good. That's all I needed to hear." When he was done, I slipped him a few bills, but he waved me off. "Nah, keep it. You been family since before they built that new Walgreens." Just glad to see you ain't letting nobody push you round. I smiled, patting his arm. Not today, Freddie. Not ever again. After he left, I made myself a sandwich and opened my notebook, the same one I'd used for my lesson plans back when I taught 5th grade. I wrote out a list. Find legal transfer info. Find someone who truly needs the car. Handle it before Saturday. The day stretched slow. Every clock tick reminded me of how easily Tasha assumed I'd just roll over. I could almost see her face when she'd realize I wasn't the type of woman you dictate to. That car represented 40 years of independence. She thought she was taking a thing I was about to teach her. She was trying to take a legacy. That evening I called Renee from church. She's the kind of woman who knows everyone's business but tells it with the discretion of a saint. Works at the clerk's office downtown. Knows paperwork like pastors know scripture. When she picked up, I could hear the choir rehearsal faintly in the background. Renee, I got a question about car titles, I said. You better not be getting no speeding tickets at your age, she teased. Not yet, I said with a grin. I just need to know what it takes to transfer ownership legally. Say I wanted to gift it. She paused a moment. You giving it to family? No, to someone who could use it more than I can. All right then. You'll need your title, a bill of sale, even if it's $0, and you gotta sign it in front of a notary. That's it. Quick and clean. Appreciate you, Renee. She lowered her voice. Evelyn, this about Tasha? I laughed softly. When is anything not about Tasha lately? She cackled, that deep church laugh that fills the room. Well, do it right, honey. Folks like her think control's the same as love. Remind her it ain't. After we hung up, I felt lighter. The kind of peace that comes when you've already made your move, even if nobody knows it yet. The next morning, I drove to the bank in that same Buick. The steering wheel was warm under my hands. The seat adjusted perfectly the way I'd always liked it. I parked out front, walking in slow, shoulders straight. The young teller greeted me, all bright and polite. How can I help you today, ma'am? I need to withdraw a small sum, I said. And I need it in cash. He nodded, typing away. As he counted the bills, I thought of all the times I'd sat across desks like that, signing field trip forms, mortgage papers, parent-teacher letters. Every paper I'd signed in my life carried the same promise. I'm responsible for me. I took the cash, tucked it in my purse, and headed across town to a little auto shop near Cascade Road. That's where I met Leroy, a tall, wiry young man with a kind face and grease-stained hands. He reminded me of my students back in the day, the ones who used to fix bikes behind the gym during recess. You still do title transfers and inspections? I asked. Yes, ma'am, he said, wiping his hands. You selling? Donating? His eyebrows lifted. That's kind of rare these days. I shrugged. Just doing what feels right. He ran a quick check, gave me a clean report, and even helped me print out a proper bill of sale for donation. When I told him who I planned to give it to, he smiled wide. I know Denise. Her little boy goes to my cousin's school. She's been saving up for a car for months. Then it's settled, I said. She'll have one by Friday. He helped me set up the paperwork neatly in a folder. Everything ready, title signed, documents notarized, no loopholes. I even made a copy to keep for myself. My old teacher instincts never died. I still liked keeping receipts. That night I called Denise. She answered breathless, like she'd just chased her son around the apartment. Miss Evelyn? Everything okay? Better than okay, I said. You still taking 2 buses to work? She sighed. Yes, ma'am. I'm hoping to get a used car next month when my tax refund hits. Save that refund for something else, I told her. I got something for you. My Buick. It's yours now. There was a long silence, then a shaky inhale. Miss Evelyn, you can't be serious. I'm as serious as Sunday morning. The papers are signed. Come by Friday afternoon and bring your boy. We'll drive it around the block together. Her voice cracked when she thanked me, and I could hear her crying softly. That sound washed over me like cool rain after a long drought. After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, the documents spread out before me. Everything was done. Clean, legal, final. I could already imagine Tasha's face when she'd show up Saturday, expecting to take what wasn't hers, only to find the driveway empty and a neat envelope waiting with the truth. Friday came bright and blue. Denise arrived with her little boy clutching a toy car. She was nervous, grateful, still in her work uniform. I handed her the keys and she hugged me tight, one of those hugs that speak without words. We prayed together right there by the Buick, the hum of passing cars mixing with her whispered thanks. When she drove away, sunlight gleamed off the hood, and for the first time in a long while I felt free. Later, I brewed tea and watched from my porch as the sky turned orange over the rooftops. The driveway looked strange without the Buick, but not empty, like something sacred had been released. Tasha had said I didn't need the car. Maybe she was right, but she'd learn soon that what I needed was the power to choose for myself. As I sealed the manila envelope with the donation papers inside, ready for Saturday, I whispered, almost laughing, "You said I didn't need it, Tasha. Maybe someone else did." The cicadas started singing again, and I leaned back in my chair, letting the night wrap around me like a hymn. Saturday came heavy and hot, the kind of morning that made the air feel sticky even before the sun climbed all the way up. I had just finished watering my begonias when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Marcus's black SUV rolled up the driveway, shining like it always did, and I knew from the way the door slammed that this visit wasn't going to be peaceful. Tasha stepped out first, her sunglasses hiding her eyes but not her attitude. Marcus followed behind, looking like a man trying to keep peace in a battlefield he didn't sign up for. "Morning, Mama," he said, voice cautious. "Morning, baby," I replied, calm as dew. "You hear about the car?" Tasha didn't bother with greetings. "Yes, we're here about the car," she snapped, already walking toward the empty driveway like she expected the Buick to appear out of thin air. "Where is it?" I wiped my hands on my apron, pretending not to notice the edge in her tone. "Gone," I said simply. "Gone." Her voice rose an octave. "What do you mean gone? Don't play games, Evelyn." I looked her dead in the eye. "I mean it's gone. Not stolen, not missing. Gone where it needed to go." Her jaw dropped. "You didn't." She glanced at Marcus, who was frowning now, confusion written all over his face. "Mama, what happened? Did somebody take it?" I shook my head slowly. "No, baby. I gave it away." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. A bird chirped somewhere, oblivious to the storm brewing on my porch. Tasha laughed, sharp and disbelieving. "You gave it away? To who? For what reason?" I folded my arms. "To someone who needed it. A single mother from church. She works 2 jobs, takes 2 buses every day. That car will make her life a whole lot easier." Marcus blinked, trying to process it. "Mama, why didn't you tell us?" I met his eyes gently. "Because it wasn't your business to handle. The car was mine. Paid for, titled to me, maintained by me. I had the right to do with it as I pleased." Tasha stepped forward, her voice trembling with rage. "That car was part of this family's assets. You could have sold it, put the money toward something useful. Instead, you just gave it away." I tilted my head, voice steady. "You keep saying useful. Maybe you need to learn that not everything worth doing makes a profit." She turned to Marcus, pointing at me like a prosecutor. "Do you hear this? She's not thinking straight. She's being manipulated. Someone probably talked her into this." Marcus sighed, rubbing his temples. "Tasha, calm down." "No," she snapped. "This is serious. That car could have been sold for thousands. We were counting on that money." I raised an eyebrow. "We were?" That question shut her up for a second. Marcus looked between us, guilt flashing in his eyes. "Mama, it's just..." Tasha thought maybe we could use the extra funds for the kids' tuition next year. "I should have talked to you first." I softened a little toward him. My son wasn't cruel, just caught. But Tasha? She was burning with the kind of pride that makes people cruel without even realizing it. She crossed her arms. "Well, if you won't do the right thing, I will. I'm calling the police. That car's technically part of the estate." "Estate?" I laughed softly. "My husband left me that car, Tasha. Not you. Not Marcus. Me." But she was already pulling out her phone, tapping furiously. Marcus tried to stop her, whispering something I couldn't hear, but she waved him off. Within minutes, 2 patrol cars pulled up, lights flashing red and blue across my hydrangeas. Neighbors peeked through blinds, heads popping out of doorways like it was free entertainment. A tall officer walked over, notebook in hand. "Afternoon, ma'am. We got a call about a possible theft." Before I could speak, Tasha jumped in. Yes, officer. My mother-in-law's car was taken without authorization. We believe she's being exploited. The officer turned to me. Ma'am, can you tell me what happened? I smiled politely. Yes, officer. The car wasn't stolen. I donated it. Here's the paperwork. I handed him the neatly folded copies I'd kept, signed title transfer, notarized donation form, the whole package. He read through them carefully, then glanced back at Tasha. Ma'am, he said, his tone changing, this all looks in order. The vehicle belonged to her legally. There's nothing criminal here. Tasha's face turned red. She's old. She doesn't know what she's doing. That did it. I straightened my shoulders and looked her square in the eye. Old doesn't mean foolish, Tasha. I may have gray hair, but I still remember how to read my own name on a title. A few of the neighbors clapped quietly from across the street. Even the officer cracked a tiny smile before tipping his hat. Y'all have a good day. Then he left and the squad cars rolled away, leaving behind a silence even thicker than before. Marcus spoke first. Mama, I'm sorry. This got out of hand. It sure did, I said, my voice soft but unshaken. Tasha wasn't done. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You made us look like fools. I gave her a long look. You did that yourself. She turned on her heel and stormed off, muttering under her breath. Marcus followed her, shoulders heavy, saying he'd call me later. When their car disappeared, I finally let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. That night, I sat at my kitchen table again. The house quiet except for the faint ticking of that old wall clock. My nerves trembled a little. Winning that round felt good, but I knew Tasha wasn't done. Women like her don't lose quietly. Sure enough, on Monday morning, an envelope arrived in my mailbox, thick, official-looking. I opened it carefully and my heart dropped a little. It was a civil complaint, filed by Tasha with Marcus's name on it too. She was claiming I had acted out of mental instability and had made an irrational disposal of family property. I stared at those words for a long time, the paper trembling in my hands. The audacity of it almost made me laugh. She wanted to take me to court over a car I bought with my own paycheck 20 years ago. I sat back, letting the anger rise and settle like storm clouds. Then I did what I've always done when faced with a bully. I got practical. I picked up my phone and called Ms. Joan, an old colleague from the teachers' union. She'd gone into law after retirement, said she missed fighting for what's right. When I told her what happened, she laughed that deep, no-nonsense laugh only a black woman over 60 can pull off. Evelyn, she said, this child done lost her mind. Bring me every paper you got, and we'll end this foolishness fast. By Tuesday, we were sitting in her office surrounded by stacks of manila folders. She adjusted her glasses and started marking things with a red pen. She can't win this, Joan muttered. You've got proof of ownership, intent, and donation. But I'll tell you this, it's about pride, not law. I know, I said quietly. She wants to win, even if it means burning down peace in the family. Joan nodded. Then we'll make sure she burns her own ego instead. I went home that evening drained but steady. I poured myself a cup of chamomile tea and stood by the window, watching the rain start to fall. The driveway glistened wet and empty. But I didn't see loss, I saw freedom. Still, I couldn't ignore the ache in my chest. Marcus hadn't called. Not once. Maybe he was caught in the middle, but silence has its own cruelty. I missed his voice, the way he used to ask for advice on everything from grilling ribs to raising the kids. Now, all that stood between us was a lawsuit and a woman who couldn't stand the thought of me owning my own decisions. I folded the complaint neatly and placed it beside my Bible. Then I whispered a short prayer. Not for victory but for peace. Lord, let her learn something from this before I have to teach her the hard way. The clock ticked on, the rain softened to a drizzle, and the night settled in. I was tired but not broken. They could drag me to court, gossip about me, call me senile if it made them feel big. But I knew the truth. They took my car. Now they were coming for my mind. I looked out at the rain-dark street, the porch light flickering like an old heartbeat, and whispered, let's see who runs out of gas first. The day of the hearing came draped in gray clouds, the kind that made Atlanta look older, slower, like the sky itself was holding its breath. I dressed carefully that morning, Not to impress, but to remember who I was. A navy blue church suit, pressed white blouse, and the silver brooch Robert gave me our 20th anniversary. My hands trembled a little as I pinned it to my lapel. It wasn't nerves, it was reverence. Every piece of that outfit meant something. A lifetime stitched together by choices that were mine. I stood before the mirror smoothing my skirt, whispering, "You taught children to read, you buried a husband, you paid every bill with your name on it. You don't owe anyone proof of your sanity." The reflection looking back at me wasn't weak or old. It was weathered, like oak polished by years of storms. Miss Joan picked me up right on time in her small gray sedan, gospel playing softly on the radio. "You ready, Miss Carter?" she asked, smiling behind her glasses. "As I'll ever be," I said, holding my purse close. Inside it were copies of everything: the title, the donation papers, even the thank you note Denise had written in neat cursive, framed by her son's crayon drawing of the Buick. The courthouse smelled like floor polish and nerves. People shuffled around clutching folders, whispering, waiting. We sat in the back until the clerk called my name. Case number 4132B. Carter versus Carter. The irony of it wasn't lost on me. Family against family. I could almost hear Robert muttering from heaven, "Lord have mercy, Evelyn." When we walked to the front, Tasha was already seated beside her lawyer, a young man in an expensive suit who looked like he practiced smiling in the mirror. Marcus sat behind her, staring down at his hands. He didn't look up when I entered. That hurt more than I expected. The judge was an older black woman with salt and pepper hair pulled back in a bun. Her nameplate read Honorable Judge Williams, and from the firm way she adjusted her glasses, I could tell she'd seen every kind of family foolishness under the sun. Ms. Joan gave my shoulder a quick squeeze. "Just tell the truth," she whispered. "That's all you've ever needed to do." Tasha's lawyer went first. He stood, smooth as butter, and began, "Your Honor, my clients, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, are deeply concerned about the recent erratic actions of Mr. Carter's elderly mother. She has given away valuable property under questionable influence, demonstrating impaired judgment and possible mental decline." I almost laughed right there. Impaired judgment. These people had no idea how clearly I saw them. Judge Williams raised a hand. "You can skip the theatrics, counselor. What specific damages are you claiming?" The lawyer hesitated. "We're requesting a temporary guardianship and financial oversight, Your Honor." Translation: they wanted control of my money and what was left of my independence. Ms. Joan rose next, all calm confidence, her voice steady and sharp. "Your Honor, what my client has done is not erratic. It's generous. The vehicle in question was fully owned by Mrs. Carter. She had every right to transfer or donate it. We have notarized documents proving full legality. What this really is," she leaned forward slightly, "is a case of a daughter-in-law trying to punish an older woman for refusing to be controlled." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Judge Williams looked over her glasses at Tasha. "That true, ma'am? You trying to control your mother-in-law?" Tasha straightened her posture. "Absolutely not. I'm trying to protect her. She's being taken advantage of. She gave away a perfectly good car to a stranger." Joan smiled faintly. "Stranger?" Mrs. Carter donated the vehicle to Denise Watkins, a single mother and member of her church congregation. I have her statement right here. The judge skimmed the paper Joan handed over, her eyes narrowing slightly. Right then, the back doors of the courtroom opened, and Denise herself stepped in, nervous but radiant, wearing her best dress, holding her little boy's hand. The child clutched a small toy car, blue like the Buick had been. They took seats quietly in the back, but everyone noticed. Joan gestured subtly toward them. "Your Honor, that's Ms. Watkins. She's here to testify voluntarily." The judge nodded. "Bring her forward." Denise approached the stand, voice trembling but sincere. "Mrs. Carter didn't know me well, ma'am, but she heard I was walking to work every day. She said she wanted to help me. I didn't ask for nothing. She said she wanted her car to keep moving, not rust in a driveway." Judge Williams asked softly, "And you accepted it?" "Yes, ma'am. I tried to pay her, but she refused. Said all she wanted was for me to promise to drive careful." The courtroom went still. Even Tasha's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Marcus finally looked up, eyes glistening. Joan stood again. "Your Honor, This isn't a story about mental decline. It's a story about legacy, about a woman choosing kindness over control. The judge leaned back in her chair. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the ceiling fan. Then she spoke. "Mrs. Carter," she said, turning to me, "would you like to say anything?" I stood, my knees steady, my hands calm. "Yes, Your Honor, I would." My voice didn't shake. It came out clear, like a hymn sung from the gut. I spent my whole life teaching children to think for themselves, to read, to write, to speak their truth. I drove that Buick every day for 20 years, to work, to church, to hospitals, to funerals, to graduations. Every mile was my life. And when I decided it could help someone else, I made that choice with a clear mind and a grateful heart. I didn't lose my senses. I found my purpose again. I glanced at Marcus, then at Tasha. The only thing I'm guilty of is refusing to let anyone treat me like I'm already gone. Judge Williams nodded slowly, her face softening. "That's quite enough." She shuffled through the papers one last time, then looked up. "This case is dismissed." Mrs. Carter acted within her legal rights. And for the record, generosity is not a symptom of incompetence. The gavel struck wood. Just like that, it was over. Tasha's face drained of color. She whispered something to Marcus, but he didn't respond. He looked at me, really looked, for the first time in months. "Mama," he murmured, voice cracking. "I'm sorry." I reached out and squeezed his hand. "I know, baby. Just don't let folks confuse love with ownership." When I stepped outside the courthouse, the clouds had broken, sunlight spilling over the marble steps. Denise caught up to me, hugging me tight. "You didn't have to do this for me," she said. "I did," I replied, "because someday somebody did it for me." Her boy grinned up at me, holding out the toy car. "Miss Evelyn, it's just like yours." I laughed softly. "It's yours now, sweetheart. Just promise me you'll drive proud." As they walked away, I felt something inside me loosen. The last knot of anger, the last trace of humiliation, gone. Later that afternoon, I sat on my porch again, sweet tea in hand, watching the sun dip low over the neighborhood. The driveway was still empty, but it didn't look lonely anymore. It looked earned. Across the street, Mr. Jenkins waved. "Heard you won, Miss Evelyn." I smiled. Didn't need to win. Just needed to be heard. Inside, the phone rang. It was Marcus. We talked for nearly an hour, really talked the way we used to. He told me Tasha was embarrassed, taking a break to visit her mother for a while. I didn't wish her harm. Some lessons you can't teach through anger. Only time can do that. When we hung up, I opened my window and let the evening breeze drift in. The air smelled of rain, magnolias, and something sweeter, peace. I thought about Robert again, his hands on that steering wheel, his laughter filling the car. I imagined him smiling somewhere, proud that I hadn't let anyone write the last chapter of my story but me. As the cicadas began to sing and the streetlights flickered on, I whispered to myself, almost laughing, "They thought they took my ride. Turns out, I was the one finally driving."